anybody here participating here? Apparently there was an invite to council members on their smoke account, so perhaps staff can find out the date and time for that. It's possible he's coming at 5:30. That's happened. So we'll move on. If he shows up, we'll fit him in at the end if we can.
So,
all right.
Excuse me, will we have a contact number? Should we
I
want to?
think we have a phone number there.
Oh, okay.
So she can contact him and see if he wants to come another time or just find out the date and time. He's probably just telling us what's going on.
To come and count, which we'd like to do.
Yes. All right.
Amazing program.
We'll move on to the next delegation then, which is Christian Nielsen from Mackling Heritage Society. Welcome, Christian, to the podium. And you have 10 minutes for your presentation.
All right.
Should be required.
So for that, I'll set my clock at 9.
I'll remind you.
All right. Mr. Mayor, council, staff, friends. I guess I need my glasses for sure. Okay. This is really my impression of what the McLang saga is, where it is right now. Next week, I'll have been in Comox for 3 years. I have known of McLang for 2 and been involved for 1. And now I speak to you as a new president of MLHS, and it is essentially a person looking for goodwill. Whether I get congratulations or no sympathy, that all depends on your point of view. I think it's fair to say that successive administrations will always inherit desirable and less desirable issues from previous administrations. However, they all remain on the books until they are dealt with and solved in a proper legal manner. Oh, and I'd like to keep this in mind. I've heard this said. There are 2 kinds of people. There are those who says it can't be done, and those who says it can be done. And the irony is, they're both right. So, who was Hamilton McLang? Was he a historical figure or individual? Well, he was the first naturalist hired by Parks Canada. At the Victoria Archives, he takes up nearly 25 feet of shelf space with his manuscript and letters. Heritage BC have expressed it. Think he has real historical value. The National Trust of Canada agrees with this too. I've read about a half-inch stack of letters to and from McLang, covering the period of 1976 to 79, when he was in his mid-90s, still firing. These came from, among others, the Smithsonian, the Museum of Man in Ottawa, plus a whole array of universities across the US and Canada. All of them wanted to know if he knew certain individual and researchers, whether he could be pinned these to a place or time. Most letters were there to verify something that they weren't sure about. Had he done studies and surveys here or there? Did he have a bird count for this period of time? Had anything changed at the Oyster River estuary in the past 20 years? As far as I can tell, he answered all of them, obviously by hand. These links make him a bit of a North American authority. So, he was a historical figure, and that makes Shakeside a historical site. Now, I'm sorry to say this, but as I walk past Shakeside almost daily, the state of disrepair and neglect is showing. It could use some TLC and goodwill. Now, petitions. So remember the Baybrook Down petition of September 14? It had 102 signatures. I was here together with Fred last July. We handed over 215 signatures in support of saving Shakeside. There was 103 from Comox, 45 from Courtenay, Comox Valley 6, BC 61. And on that day, what we got was a read, prepared statement in response to our presentation. In short, no one listened. So, no sign of goodwill here. Today, we have 352 new signatures in support of saving Shakesides. Comox 244, Courtney 60, Comox Valley 22, and 26 from BC. In total, that's 565 in support of our cause. The online petition is now over 400. We certainly feel our support is growing. Well, as far as I can tell, again, I've had 2 years listening to all of it. One is there's no money. So the trust that came into effect in 1982 had $45,000 in it, and in 2000 it had grown to $48,000. Now, I had a car loan at 16% in that period. We had interest rates for a large part of the 80s at between 13 and 16%. I know you probably weren't there, but a previous administration took care of this. So, and based on the FOIs we have received from the town, there are a few specified items of maintenance entered into these general ledgers. So, the question then comes, how much is needed? Was there ever even a rough estimate on the cost to convert shake sites? What is the figure? And the other reason this can't go ahead is what has been said. So the response 9 months ago here was all about the language used by individuals. Well, I suppose they were all by MLHS people. Now, we could spend a little bit of time talking about the Goebbels comparison that floated around sometime. And the best I can possibly say is this. It's an incredible insensitive comment. Because in this town, I've met lots of people that have very painful encounters with the Nazi Minister of Information. My family, personally, also. Not me. My older sister was a teenager at the end of the war. And I'll just throw this in. I remember, Denmark in 1945, this was not troops that were sent to the Eastern Front. These were 15, 16-year-old boys and 50, 60-year-old men, all on horseback. Okay, graffiti. I submitted a picture to the town of the two kinds we've had down there. So, I'm sure neither of them had a permit. The first artwork was painted over just before Nautical Days in 2016. Now we have a more traditional graffiti scribbles on display. It's been there since January, and nobody seems to bother. So I'm not getting much goodwill there. So remember, this is the guy looking for goodwill. How can we go forward? So against all odds, let's pretend there is some goodwill. So A, we propose to work the Shakeside Reno to go forward as a community project. We have 10 to 12 different contracting companies, various individuals, all lining up, all understanding that mainly the work will be done pro bono. And that number is growing by the week. Myself included, 45 years as a mason. We need to secure the structure. By that I mean we need to get a tarp over the roof to stop the moisture coming in. That's where there's wood or masonry, water always wins. We need to get heritage organizations and resources involved. Many of those organizations have connections to funding. Funding is available. So why not seek them out? Heritage BC is one. Famous quote from the Echo, 27th of 16 carried this. We have identified 20 sources of funding, but for what? So we've been 35 years in the making, and we have no time, or is it no goodwill? I was a youth coach in soccer for 17 years, and I've told a lot of kids and youngsters, there's two kinds of people. There are those who are part of the solution, and those who are part of the problem. It's all up to you, and yeah, there is no space in between the two. It's all up to you to fit in, where are you fitting in? That's a question. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for your presentation. Council may have questions for the delegation. Just keeping in mind the matter is shortly going before the courts. So
yeah.
that's
Which probably brings up one little point. I can kill the phone now. 10 seconds to go. And that is, will you keep us informed about proceedings, court dates, etc., etc.?
I'll turn that over to staff for any response in that regard.
I believe once the application is made, it's public knowledge, and we can advise.
We certainly would very much appreciate that, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Right. Any questions, comments? Councilman King?
Just a question for our CAO and/or staff or committee members might be able to help here is that can you just refresh the council's memory and the public's memory, for that matter, about the condition of the building and concerns about the condition of the building on the property there that came up both to the committee and to council?
I believe it's been touched on in the presentation, and perhaps, I think Councillor Mark Grant, you were on the tour as part of the committee. The building is in poor condition. It has been for several years. As mentioned, the roof is in disrepair. The structure itself is, many would argue, beyond restoration. And that is one of the reasons that we brought the issue before council to move on modifying the truss and perhaps put a structure in its place that could still commemorate the memory of Mac Lang and not meet the initial trust position, but something that would satisfy the trust in general.
Okay. Councillor Price.
And you mentioned that you were relatively new to the Valley. Have you seen the early Mac Lang Society report when there were both the houses there?
Yeah.
The one that spoke to Shakeside is in terrible condition, and the money that was in the trust for Shakeside should go to Baybrook, and that the basement floods and therefore it's not capable of being kept. I don't know whether you...
Oh, I've read it.
Okay.
I've read it. I'm intimately familiar with it. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So, two things comes to mind. A, I believe Shakeside or Baybrook is gone.
Yes.
And there was somebody, I can't remember who was, but it was said that there was a compromise right there. Because I think it's fair to say Baybrook was probably the better option, the better structure. I got 45 years into construction, and part of it was restoring houses for myself. And I've seen much worse than Shakeside's, but it's going to be it's going to be work. There's no doubt about it. My thought was always Baybrook was the one, not location. This, that, and the other was a good thing. You had another point?
I was just wondering if you'd seen the
Yeah,
report
no, I
recommended
have seen it,
that
but since
Shakeside
that one
be done.
since that one is gone, we don't really have no options there. I cannot imagine that it can be in any way described as we formulated a compromise with tearing down both houses. That just goes against everything that I think is, fair, reasonable, and possible. The last thing I want to say is, I was 25 years old when I came to Canada. So I was born and raised in Denmark. I've lived some in Holland. My wife is Dutch. We spent 35 years in Calgary. And I would bet my bottom dollar, anywhere we've lived, Baybrook would have been up and running decades ago. As a newcomer, I do not understand how this turned into such a poisonous nuclear dump facility. Which is really, the lines that are drawn in this community and the split and how this all is playing out is, at some points we're gonna have to reach across these divides. But I don't see it. I don't see it.
All right.
Well, I'd like to say that,
Questions only.
yeah. So have you seen some of the comments that have been made about this council and individuals?
Oh, I have.
Okay.
I've tried to get a fair view of it. Yeah,
And I dare
there's-
say that you haven't seen
yeah.
or read
Yeah.
any comments from members of council to any of your particular members. So I agree with you that bridges need to be made, but there are some very caustic comments
Oh,
made
it's-
about individuals around this table.
Yeah.
And you know, I think
It's not helping.
exactly, it's not helping.
It's not helping.
But they still are made, though.
I missed one paragraph in here, and that is the point. You know, there are some people that were bullies in grade 3, and some of them, you know, it hasn't changed. And after 45 years of construction, I have met a few that were still
But we're not in
bullied.
grade 3 anymore, sir.
No, but this is it. But some of them stayed with that line of thinking forever. And there is someone outside. I know that. I know that. But
Those kind of discussions can certainly happen at any time,
Yeah.
certainly outside this table, outside this chambers, but
that would be
I
wonderful.
do thank you to presenting the
Thank you
petition.
kindly.
And I can assure you that council and staff, at least from our perspective, is showing nothing but goodwill in trying to deal with this issue. So to indicate otherwise is unfortunate, but we'll move on and we'll see what we can do to resolve this issue as we have resolved to this point. So thank you again, and we'll move on to the next item. This is a matter of new business, really. There were some discussions, I guess, following a committee of the whole a few weeks ago around the possibility of enhancing council's participation in, at the very least, the Nautical Days Parade this year in honor of, I guess, the Canada 150 celebrations, and perhaps expanding that to include other parades in the community. I did have a discussion with Councillor Margaret about that, and I suggested that it might be something that if council wants to turn its mind to it and bring some formality to it, we could, if council wished, establish a select committee to at least look into 150 done. Of course, any commitments would be subject to perhaps budget considerations and of course, staff time. So it can be formalized like this, or it can perhaps be less formal. It's kind of up to council as to how they want to proceed. But I guess based on the discussions that I was having, Councillor Granny and subsequent with our Assistant Deputy Administrator here, this is one way we could go in terms of how you want to proceed. Of course, the mayor is always part of these parades, or the acting mayor is one of the dignitaries, whether on foot, bike, or car. So I think the idea was perhaps creating a float. So that's on the table for your discussion and consideration if you want to proceed. And this is an opportunity to, I guess, formalize it if you wish. So, go ahead.
Yeah, I think the intent there was, recognizing the 150th anniversary of Canada, and us maybe putting a little bit of life of our own into the parade. I think there were some great ideas thrown around, if I may speak, of past, present, and future, and have some past councillors, mayors, present, and our future. And I think Councillor Grant and Price and Lori Swift commented maybe inadvertently about that last council meeting where you talked about the Girl Guides here, and some of you said that, I could see them being some of our future councillors. And I think that type of involvement with the youth, with the past and the present, I think is a nice way to go forward and celebrate Nautical Days, which is a premier event in the town, the 150th anniversary. And I think I would like to move forward with a type of committee. Sure. I'd be more than happy to chair it, but I don't know how formal it has to be.
Well,
I'd
we probably should, if that discussion is going to ensue and the possibility of budget or staff time is involved, and it should probably become a select committee. I think staff would provide a suggestion that we could, if we passed a resolution tonight, to establish such a committee and then review those options.
Yeah, and we have, or I've thought of different ways, and I'm more than happy to donate some of my own money to what we need to do this, because I don't want to put it on the town. But I think it's an interesting concept that I'd like to take the credit for it, but I think it was Councillor Grant came up with it last year after the parade. So,
any other discussion on that general concept, and we could proceed with the resolution as suggested, or something similar to that?
Before we proceed with the resolution, I would just like to add a footnote to all of that. The enthusiasm was great, And we certainly want to carry that through. We have a great reason to celebrate our town.
Sure.
And this is one opportunity to do so. So let's go on with the first step, and perhaps that's going to be the select committee.
Okay. And do you want to broaden it beyond nautical days, or do you want to possibly, as I mentioned, either Empire Days or Canada Day, or I don't know?
Personally, I think nautical days done
Okay.
properly
That'll
would
be
be
the
great.
focus. Okay.
And we'll have a special place for you.
I'm sure you will.
That's right.
Any other general comments before we
Well, I
continue?
just wondered if we're going to have a select committee. You know, the initial idea here was I thought we'd just meet on Friday afternoon over a beer and talk about a float. Right? I never really saw it getting this formal or anything of that nature, and I didn't really see it being a big cost thing. I mean, really, the rationale for bringing staff into it was because if we needed a truck to pull a float or something, we might need a truck. That was really where we were going with it. Seems to be getting awfully formal to me, but I guess that's fine.
Well,
But I mean, it's supposed to be light and fun.
No, I agree, but I think CEO can explain why we need to perhaps consider a direction from council in that regard.
And pom-poms, please.
Yes. Establishing the committee allows more than 3 members of council to gather and discuss this, because otherwise you are forming a quorum and essentially do need to broadcast that information. So this gives you the authority to get together and shake your pom-poms.
So can we meet at the Blackfin? That's my only question.
Yes, you may.
All right, so motion would be in order.
All right, I'll move the recommendation.
I'll second it.
Okay. And so that would, on the passage, then go to the next council meeting, then we could appoint members to it from there. So,
Yes.
Okay. Any further discussion? Councilor Finn?
Just to clarify, the focus on youth is wonderful. And I think the parades are all about youth coming to watch parades. And to get them involved as pointing them out as future leaders is a wonderful concept. So I certainly support that, as did a lot of others in that initial.
For you, that means anyone under 65.
When I'm 64.
I've been calling you for a long time.
All right, all those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you, council and staff. I'll move that forward. Next item is just a report on the successful tender on the Rob Avenue Project Phase 2. So motion to receive that.
Second.
All those in favor? Motion's carried. Any further to add, CEO? City engineer.
No, Shelley's away right now, but it's great news that the tender results have come in within budget, and so that this project will be proceeding May, June of this year.
Can I just ask a
Yes.
question? I like the way we're doing this, but I've never seen that we have McElhaney is that normal practice to have them look at the quote too? And because there's more to it than just price and value as well, right? And so I like this concept. I'm just not sure if it seems, I've never seen us do it that way, or maybe I've just never seen it written up that way before.
Yeah, it is.
It's the normal way?
Yeah.
They were involved.
Yeah.
And assuming communication plans with neighbors and all that will be done as
Yes.
per the contract. Okay. All right, so that's been moved and received, and anything further on it? Seeing none, we'll move on. Item of correspondence, which relates to integrated, what do I call it here? Integrated Regional Transportation Select Committee, and just again, motion to receive that letter.
I would move receipt.
Second.
Received then, all those in favor? Motion's carried. I think Councillor Price is on that committee. My understanding is that, obviously, as this letter says, they're not going to present anything to us until they've had further discussions at a staff level in terms of what might be done. Of course, there's 2 concepts, separating multi-use path or buffered shoulder bikeways. So, and that, Councillor Price?
I think the separate route is the way to go because it creates a safe environment that people can enjoy what is a scenic view. And I hope that we can involve staff in this. And I think it's great when you get staff working together on the regional level in Courtney and Comox, because it is going to be a project that crosses boundaries. So I think on all levels there's a lot of merit to it.
So there's supposed to be a temporal workshops established.
So would it be our planning, you think, would be the... That's just
It-
Joking about that.
We're not sure if it's going to involve planning or if it's more of an engineering
Okay,
exercise.
that's good, yeah.
But they're both aware of it, and we'll see who's more appropriate to attend or discuss, perhaps both.
And the fact that the regional district is carrying such a big share, I think it's probably the gas tax money, and then looking at a 50% grant, it does, our share does become more reasonable, and for the outcome, to be able to walk between two communities, one of the most spectacular views you could hope for is something that we could sort of view it.
So I don't know all the details here, but it's referring to 300 meters length in Comox. I assume that's Comox Hill.
Hill, yeah. The worst part, an elevator, I think, something like that.
Well, of course, we did a bunch of work on that already, so what is there going to be any, how are they going to deal with having a separated path on that component for the sums involved here?
That's the question.
Those are some of our
Yeah.
questions, because I believe, without fully understanding the project, they're looking at the developing a separated path on the side of Comox Hill that is closer to the hillside. So there is
On the north side. yeah.
There is some room there, and there's obviously some work that's required. Keep in mind, Comox boundary starts about halfway up that hill. And you're correct that we have done a fair amount of work that was grant funded as well to put in the bike lanes up and down. The other issue that came to mind when we looked at it initially is how, once you get to the top of the hill, how do you cross people safely to the other side, particularly cyclists? Our longer range plan is to have a traffic circle at the top, which would make that transition easier. But at present, subject to increasing our DCCs or getting the DCC fund supplied with enough funds to build that traffic circle, it's several years out. But those are technical issues that we can be discussing.
And with all due respect to what this committee is trying to do, that work that's done on Comox Hill has helped quite a bit. The only challenge right now is the fact that when you get more than halfway down, you run into some deteriorating pavement, which Highways hasn't dealt with. They did a kind of a half-assed patch job last fall, and they've obviously got to carry on with that. So, quite honestly, I don't know how.
Your worship, you should know.
How that would be. How would that work? But
Or
let staff figure it out.
routes too.
I just wanted to say, I replaced Councillor Price at one of the meetings there,
Okay.
and those concerns were brought up. They were very unclear about the Comox Hill.
Sure.
And I think what it lent itself to, or directed itself to, was that there needed to be consultation with Town Comox staff. It's the concept that everybody agrees on. The devil's in the details, of course.
Sure.
But there was recognition that there's not an easy fix there on Comox Hill by any means. But the concept has merit.
Yeah.
So
Again, I think the fix has already been put in place, at least for most people that are cycling on that. Now, whether or not that's for everyone's benefit, and I think the limitations are going to be engineering related as much as anything else. All right.
Well, yeah, I really hope that this becomes a multi-use separated trail and not an extended bike lane, because I think that's really something that's missing. And you see in a lot of communities, Tofino and Whistler and other places like that have several of these, and they're extremely popular. So I hope that we can find a way around that. I always kind of viewed it too, and this is just my own thoughts, as going down Glacier View Drive and then cutting through IR1 and coming down through there rather than straight down the hill. Gives you the same, because there's that Sasolito Crescent. You could go right down there, through there, and of course that alleviates an awful lot of that. But that's just my
And
thoughts.
that's IR2 land.
IR, is it 2?
Or IR1, sorry.
IR1, yeah, there you go. See?
All right, well, anyway.
Yeah, and then of course there's a crossing at the other end when you get to 17th Street Bridge, but
Yeah, no,
I
I
think
think
the
it's a good
concept
project.
is, I think the concept is really great, and I hope that it's successful.
All right, well, we'll see what comes out of it. Thanks for that. I think that's it for our agenda. We do have an in-camera meeting, so motion to exclude the public under sections 9G and K of the community charters.
Second. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried, so all those votes adjourned.